Welcome to the Unfiltered Show from the Score Studios. My name is Joseph Casciaro, and our special guest in studio today is the president of the WNBA's Toronto Tempo, also served as a longtime executive with the Toronto Raptors, Teresa Resch. Thanks for coming in today.
Great to be here. Lovely studio.
Thank you. Yeah, we're really excited to have you in, and I mean, let's get right into it. I wanted to ask you right off the bat, how did the partnership with Serena Williams come to be?
Yes, Serena, the first and foremost. Here I thought you were going to ask me about the name, but that's okay.
Well,
Serena, we'll talk about that
We will
later.
talk about that after, yes.
No, Serena, it was great. So, Serena, she's such an icon, right? Like, I grew up watching her. We're actually the same age, which is kind of crazy, but grew up watching her. The best to ever do it in tennis, arguably. And she has said after she evolved past the plane of tennis that she wanted to invest in women's sports, and she's done it. She's invested in other women's sports, and she specifically said the WNBA. So when we were awarded the team, the W made us aware of that right away. Started conversations with her, and Larry Tenenbaum, our owner, controlling owner, had conversations with her, and ultimately they struck up a great kind of relationship. She was excited about what we were building here in Canada. She has a real authentic connection to this city, having spent time here, having won here. Her very first pro tournament was in Canada. And ultimately got to meet with her a couple times, talk about what we're planning. And she's on board. And it's great. It's great because she's here for all the right reasons. She's a very professional woman. She has a team around her that is some of the best that I've ever worked with. And we can't wait to do even more. And I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see how it evolves. Not just this team, but her ownership of it. And honestly, if you can ever be associated with the greatest, it just elevates everybody in the room.
Yeah, and I feel like it kind of put everyone on notice too. Like obviously everyone in the market here in Toronto is very excited for the team to arrive and Canada-wide. But I feel like just across the board, wherever you're living, if you're a sports fan and you see Serena Williams in the news and she's now co-owning a new WNBA team in Toronto, I just feel like it kind of made everyone take notice. If someone wasn't aware already that doesn't live in Toronto or Canada, that there's a WNBA team coming to Toronto, they're aware now.
Yeah, I mean, her reach is global. The New York Times quiz, I'm not sure if you take it, but the Toronto Tempo was the answer to a question. Like, that doesn't happen unless you're associated with Serena, because that's what the question was about. So, yeah, we're really excited about the exposure that she's helping this team achieve. But more than anything, we're excited about the impact she can have on it directly.
Okay, so you have a new owner to go with Larry Tenenbaum and Serena Williams. You hired the team's first general manager,
That's
Monica
right.
Wright-Rogers.
Yep.
You have a name, which we will talk about at some point. I'm glad you brought that up. But what are the other steps or the next steps between now and next spring when the Tempo debut?
Yeah, there's a lot of exciting things that are going to happen with the Tempo in the next 16 months, right? We tip off in May of 2026. So Serena is just one of many owners that we're going to be bringing on board. Okay. So Larry will remain controlling owner, but we'll bring on other limited partners. So Serena was just the first to be announced. So we're looking forward to telling those stories. But then more than anything, people are asking about tickets. So we have it open. You can put down your deposit for season tickets, but we'll start converting them into actual season seat holders. We'll go on sale with single seats. We're also going to be part of the community. So when we got awarded the team in May, it was more about building identity, building the foundation. And now that we kind of know who we are, we still don't have players, but we have some people around us, owners, name, logo, those types of things. We're going to be out in the community. So you'll see us across Canada this summer, leveraging all the exciting things that are happening on the court in the league with all the exciting things that are happening in our community. We'll also have players by the end of this year. So we need some players. So we'll probably bring on, Monica's working hard to build her team, but we'll bring on a coach and probably a performance leader in the fall before the expansion draft. No details on the expansion draft yet, but we're expecting it to be somewhat similar to what the Valkyries went through the last year.
That was going to be one of my
questions.
So
likely beginning of December. It's going to be different, though, only because Portland's part of it with us. So there's 2 teams coming in 2026. There'll be a 2-team expansion draft. So TBD on what the rules are be around that. But we're excited to get some players through that. And then obviously free agency. So it's going to be the craziest, unprecedented free agency in not just the WNBA, but probably in all of professional sports. Over two-thirds of the league is going to be free agents.
Wow.
So some of the best players in this league will be available. Now, it'll be interesting to see kind of like how it all filters out because that means that there'll be a lot of teams that also have a ton of cap space. So, I mean, for all the basketball nerds, not even basketball, but all the sports nerds on like how to construct a team and salary caps and things like that, this is going to be really interesting and really fun. So we'll be a big player in that, right? So, like you said, we're putting the league on notice, adding a name like Serena, a champion like Serena, and we look forward to the opportunity in Canada and really getting people across the league familiar with it. So the one thing with the Raptors that we learned is, the North really leaned into how we are outsiders and took that and owned it. And it was very different because we were a team in a league already and had been there for 20 years. And those teams had all traveled to Canada to play us. The WNBA is completely nascent. So none of these teams have traveled to Canada to play. There's a lot of agents that we've talked to that have said they've never even been to Toronto before. Wow. So we have an incredible opportunity to make a great first impression. So we look forward to doing that over the summer, introducing everybody around the W to Toronto and then to Greater Canada. We're excited about the game in Vancouver in August. So we won't be playing in it, but Seattle and Atlanta will be. So we look forward to being there and welcoming kind of our first wave of Canadian fans, because if you're a fan of the WNBA, you're going to be a fan of the tempo.
Absolutely. Okay, you brought up a bunch of things that I want to ask some follow-up questions for, and I've got them in my head. I'm going to go through them. First, I'll eliminate one because one of them was going to be draft-related. You already mentioned the rules we don't really know yet.
Right.
To provide context to any viewers, so for this year with Golden State being an expansion franchise, they're picking 5th, which is the first pick after the 4 lottery teams, the 4 non-playoff teams. Like you mentioned, you're also coming in with Portland, so we'll have to see there. Okay, we'll eliminate that one.
And just to be clear, that's the college draft. There's also
the
expansion draft that happened in December, and that was also only one team. So there's, within the league, the 12 teams protected 6 players, and then they could choose from the players available. So even the rules around that is going to be different for us. So
right. Okay. Now, like I said, you said a lot of things, and I already have questions. So the first one, you did give a bit of a tidbit there about how there will be more partners coming in. I know you can't obviously tell us who they're going to be, but could you give us a hint in terms of do you foresee more celebrities and athletes, former athletes, being a part of this, or will it be more just from the financial world? Can you give us any hints in that regard? Or no?
Of course. I think the term that has resonated as we've been talking to people is strategic. So Serena is a very strategic partner in the ownership piece, and every single person that we're bringing on is strategic for different reasons. Mm-hmm. So like you said, there's some celebrity for exposure. There's some who are incredible businesswomen. There's some who are incredible community contributors. So there's a long list of different ways that you can be a strategic owner for this team. So look forward to telling their stories as they come on board. Okay,
you also mentioned coaching. A couple questions would be, when do you hope to have a coach in place? And also, how important is it to you and the team, if at all, for that coach to be a woman?
So timing wise, don't hold me to this, honestly. Monica, our general manager, is really leading that search, but what we've talked about is closer to expansion draft and also after the W season is done. So thinking more October, November, December time period. I think more than anything, it's just going to be about a great fit. We want to find someone who can be the face of an organization for not just Toronto, but an entire country. Somebody who's going to be able to motivate players. Someone, I think just baseline is an exceptionally talented X's and O's, understands the game really, really well. The WNBA is also going through a huge transition. Of the 12 teams last year, 7 of them will have new coaches this next season. So there's a big transition happening in the league right now, both with style of play, but then also expectations from owners, things like that. And we are going to also see how some of those different coaches have performed. They come from a lot of different backgrounds. So it's interesting. The one thing that in the WNBA doesn't really exist right now is a great kind of development pipeline. So honestly, as recently as 5 years ago, the head coach was also the general manager. Wow. And there's this kind of trend towards sophistication that's happening and understanding how to navigate that while still recognizing all the things that have made this league successful the last 30 years. So to find that really great balance is going to be the trick. And there's so many different directions we can go, which is incredible. So it's just a matter of like, what's going to be the best fit for this team in this moment.
Okay, you also mentioned building a team, roster construction, and you mentioned something that I was going to touch on, and you said like even an agent has told you they haven't even been to Canada.
Yeah.
So I think one thing we know, and you know from working for the Raptors for so long, is that Toronto basketball fans, Toronto sports fans, Canadian sports fans are going to embrace the team. That there's no doubt about. But one of the things the Raptors struggled with in their early years, some would say to a lesser extent still now, is attracting American talent or becoming a destination for some of the top talent that maybe isn't Canadian. Do you foresee that as a problem at all on the WNBA side? Like from your time in the role so far, when you do talk to, whether it's agents or players or young stars, how excited are they about the possibility of ending up in the North? Like, is it different than it was maybe on the men's side 30 years ago?
I was just going to say, like, the way you pose that question, I can tell immediately that you have been a Toronto sports fan for your entire life. Because as an outsider coming in, right, I had never visited Canada until I moved here in 2013. So as far as like an outsider and all these things that were viewed upon as these big barriers to attracting talent and things, like, it just doesn't exist. That's a different point in time.
Well, that's great to hear.
So, there's other barriers, right? There's other things that impact it.
Yes.
I think the biggest difference that I've realized, and I'm still learning the W. Like you said, I was with the Raptors for 10 seasons. And when you're with when you're with a team that's in a league, that's what you live and breathe. And I'm learning the W, right? So I'm a year and a half into my education in the W and understanding how that league works and what are some of the really big difference makers in players' decisions to play with different teams, and then even how teams are selecting different players to round out their rosters. It's different. It's different than the NBA. First off, you're talking about a completely different salary, right? So a lot of players in the NBA are going to prioritize fit and also maximum salary. Whereas in the W, maximum salary isn't as much of a difference maker because it's not so big of a number. So you have to pay more attention to what is the fit, both on the court and off the court, and then also the opportunity to win or wherever stage they are in their career. I would say that in this point in time, Canada is viewed upon as a great place that people want to go and explore. I think we also have we ultimately have a competitive advantage being outside of the U.S. and giving an opportunity that feels a little bit different. With WNBA players, the majority of them still play overseas in the off season. So in the NBA, some, and also just like age, right? So some of the players, rookies especially, were coming out of college 1 year removed from high school. In the W, they're at least 3, most of the time 4 years removed from high school. So there's just like a development maturation process that happens during that time. And also playing overseas, just the changes and the differences that occur between different marketplaces in different countries are just not as big of a barrier because they've gone through it so many times. So I still have a lot to learn, but just from conversations, especially talking to Monica, people are really excited about Canada.
That's great to hear.
And people are really intrigued by it. I think that they have a lot of questions, and I think that there's a lot of education that we get to do. But what's great about that is we actually get to control it, and we get to actually tell the story through our lens and maybe not others. But we look forward to people like you telling our story as well and talking about what an incredible fan base this is, what an incredible quality of life this is, and like how special and unique this can be.
You also mentioned some of the things that players would look for, whether it's fit or other things, to attract them to certain teams. I'm not sure how much you've paid attention to the Unrivaled League, but one thing I've noticed is...
Close attention. That's my job.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, I figured. But one of the things I've noticed players talk about is, in a lot of cases, how much better the amenities are for them in the Unrivaled League compared to some of their WNBA teams. And I was wondering how much of that or of those areas are the Tempo, hoping to be best in class in? Like, how important is that? Is it not just building, a great basketball team or a great basketball franchise, but also making sure there are things in place to make sure the players coming here do feel like they're being treated the right way?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that we're trying to do not only at the Tempo or the WNBA, but it's across all women's sports. Like, there's a level of professionalism that you want to deliver for the best in the world, no matter what you're talking about. And, you know, Unrivaled was a completely different model, right? So it's all in one spot. Yeah. There's 3-on-3. It's only 6 people per team. They weren't traveling. Like, it was a very different product. But I think the concept of, like, listening to your players and understanding what's important to them, like, that is universal. And whether you're a woman, you're a man, you're playing professional sports, or you're playing house league hockey, like, you want to listen to what the players need in order to perform their best. So that's what we're going to try to really do, is listen to our players and understand what they need to really perform at their best and deliver on those things.
You also mentioned the ticket drive, or at the beginning of it. How has the response been so far?
Ticket deposits.
Yes.
It's going great. So we've done absolutely nothing to advertise it other than me saying right now, put down your deposits. Okay. And we're already just over 8,000. Nice. So we look forward to, promoting that, getting more people on the list. Lots of interest. We're really excited about building an incredible atmosphere at Coca-Cola Coliseum. I was just there on Sunday for a PWHL game, and it was incredible. Unfortunately, they lost in overtime, but still an incredible experience. But more than anything, we're really excited about also being across Canada. So that's maybe another announcement to look forward to. As Canada's team, we're going to play regular season games outside of Toronto. So we look forward to announcing those and making those official as well in the coming year. Yeah,
I did see on Instagram, I think it was yesterday, a couple days ago, you guys had put out like a call to action asking people across the country where they want to see community pop-ups happen around the country. And I saw that you got as far north as Iqaluit, as far west as Kelowna, and as far east as St. John. So, I mean, it seems like a good start when you have that kind of engagement coast to coast.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that goes to show that there's basketball fans all over this country, and the opportunity for this team to truly be Canada's team. So we're really excited about it. And more than anything, like, that's going to be the challenge for us, is like, we want those people, I don't even know the names you just said, but probably not going to be playing games. Like, they probably don't have an arena, but like, we want those people to feel just as connected to this team as the people that show up at every single game. So that's on us to make sure we're delivering that experience. And more than anything, we're just excited that those people already feel connected. You know, wearing the merch, we have people tagging themselves all over the world. People commenting and talking about ownership, excited about Monica. Like, there's so much positivity, and the reach has been incredible.
Yeah, I mean, from the outside looking in, it really does feel like it's just like the Tempo have arrived at the perfect time. We were talking off air right before we started recording about just like the boom in the interest in women's sports. I could speak even here at the Score. Like, we just added the PWHL to the app, and the interest we've seen in app and through our social channels for the WNBA has been incredible the last couple years. From the inside, does it really feel like that? Like, this team has really arrived at kind of the perfect moment in the sports landscape?
I mean, I think it's probably like, I don't know the right analogy. I don't have kids, but it's probably like having kids is like the time. You can never plan for the right time. It's just like, you're next up. And like, I guess that's us. Like, we're next up. And whatever the time is right now is right. I mean, what we like to say is that this is no longer a moment. This is a movement. And it's not just about the Tempo. It's about women's sports in general. And, it's been a long time coming, but we're excited to be here. We're excited to be here now. And, yeah, the timing is perfect because it is because we're here, right? Yeah. It's perfect because we're here.
Okay, is there any concern at all? I do know, like, some players have talked about potential work stoppage later this year. It would be before Toronto obviously took the court. Angel Reese talked about it in recent days. Would there be any concern at all about a halt in that momentum if there was a work stoppage or anything like that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you look at any single sport. If there's ever been a work stoppage, it has completely impacted the league and the team. So, yeah, you always... you don't want those, right? It's negative for everybody. So we're staying close to it. You know, I think the negotiations are ongoing, but we look forward to launching in 2026.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest, I could speak even from just like the fandom side of it, and even having the pulse of fans. Obviously, I agree with you that any work stoppage would not be good for a league, but I can honestly say that I think the excitement and the anticipation for the Tempo themselves as a franchise, I feel like even if fans had to wait a little longer, I don't think it would disrupt the momentum for the team itself, because people really do seem to be frothing at the mouth for the WNBA in Toronto and in Canada. Okay, you did bring up the name at the very beginning, and I'm glad you did, because I do want to talk to you about this. So I'll be honest. When the name was first announced, I was one of the people that was like, Not what I was expecting. I wasn't sold on it, but I did say at the time, look, once the ball tips, we're all getting behind this team. They've got Toronto on their chest, representing Canada, and we're all going to support them. What would you say to someone like me who at the beginning might have been like, I don't know about this, or just not what I was expecting? Or maybe that's what you were going for.
Oh, we were just going for a team that really resonated across Canada. We thought that tempo really, really connects to the game. And we've been so excited about the positivity that we've had in return. Not everybody's going to love it. We can't please everybody, but I think especially since the merch has launched, look how sweet my jacket looks.
It looks clean.
Come on. Yeah. But we're really excited about it. I think more than anything is it's been so positively received. Like, I'm not going to say you're the only person that hasn't said, but like there's been very few, and we think that ultimately
I'm not hating. I just want to be honest, because I also don't want to be like, I loved it from the beginning.
Yeah, I think we have a name that a lot of people can rally around. And more than anything, we're excited about how it can evolve and grow with this team. There's so much game theater that we can do with it. And more than anything, it's like, not everybody's going to love everything that we do, but we just want people to be positive. Like, I think it's like you can go down a rabbit hole and find people to be negative about whatever, but like we're going to surround ourselves with joy and positivity and energy to get us to the next level. And ultimately, we're going to make mistakes, but I think more than anything, we want to be transparent in both our name process and everything that we do so that you can understand why we're making some of the decisions we are. And you know what? It's sports. It's not all going to go as planned. And we look forward to like having those people who are going to be there through thick and thin, positive, supportive the whole way, because I think that's what women's sports is about in a way that's a little different than men's sports. Is there's a huge community component to it in a way that's a little different than in men's sports, and I think that's why people gravitate towards it. It's about more than the game. It's about the community. It's about building community, and we're so excited about the community of tempo that's being built right now.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I can speak to it even on the media side, the fan side. There does seem to be this like grassroots movement happening, and it's still more than a year away from the first game being tipped. So I think it's going to be a smashing success. Before we let you go, if you had a message to basketball fans out there, sports fans out there, men's sports or women's sports, what would you say to them in terms of what you think this team will represent or what you want it to represent in Toronto and Canada?
Well, a couple things. I think that's a pretty big question.
Yeah, it's loaded.
To put in 3 words. But I'm excited that the tempo gets to be Canada's team from the very beginning. So this is a team for all Canadians. So number one, we are a place where everyone can be welcomed, everyone can feel part of it, build your community, talk about it, share it, feel part of it because you are. So I think first and foremost, we're really excited about being Canada's team from the forefront. And then secondly, we want to be a team. I mean, our purpose literally that we got in a room and thought about is like our purpose is to be a team that unites and inspires everyone through excellence and joy. So that's our goal. We want to be a great team both on and off the court. We want to elicit joy, and we want to bring people together, and not just men or girls or women, but like everyone. So, I mean, it's a pretty, like, that was a big question with a big answer, but that's what we strive to be. It's not specific. We really, really want to be for everyone, and we want to bring people together, and we want to be joyful in everything we do.
No, it was a loaded question, but I think you nailed it in terms of the answer, and I think I can hear like the passion in your voice when you talk about it, and I think that's the kind of thing that does resonate with people, especially when it is a new team and people are looking for something to rally behind, and I think you've given them that so far. And like I said, it's still 15 months from the first game.
I know we talk about it all the time. Like, imagine what this team is going to be like when we have a player.
Yeah, honestly, it feels like so long away, but I'm sure it'll be here in no time, and we look forward to watching and continue to monitor it. And we'd love to have you back in at some point between now and next spring when the tempo tip off.
Yeah, I would love to come back. I think more than anything, I mentioned it a little bit earlier. You mentioned it, actually. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit here. There's a lot of Canadians who love sport and are huge supporters of women's sports at the most elite level. And those people are fans. But for us to truly optimize the opportunity is we have to we have to draw in those people who have never cared about sport or even cared about basketball or women in their lives, and we need them to fall deeply in love with us. And the way that we do that is by telling our story. So thank you for telling our story today.
Thank you for coming in.
And we encourage all the
time.
listeners, like, tell your friends, talk about the tempo. We're doing all kinds of things this year to talk about. Buy our merch. It looks really cool. What'd you say? It looks smart. This jacket looks
clean.
smart.
It's very clean.
It looks
yes,
clean.
It is, yeah.
And then also, like, just watch League Pass. You know, this is an incredible league. We won't be on the court this year, but in 2025, there's 12 of those players that will be on our roster through the expansion draft. So check it out. Get to know the league before we take part.
Teresa Resch, thank you so much for coming in. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks again to Teresa Resch. Really appreciate her time and also the Tempo merch she brought in for me. Right now, we're going to switch gears, go from the WNBA to some trending topics in the NBA, and who better to talk about those trending topics with than the Score's Director of Social, Scott Campsall.
What's up, Cash? Thanks for having me back on.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry I don't have any Tempo merch for you, but
yeah,
I do have some hot topics to talk about.
Oh, man, it's the second best thing.
We can't talk about the biggest news in the NBA right now without talking about not just the Lakers, but LeBron James hurting his groin strain. People remember I think it was his first season in LA, like the first long-term injury of his career was a groin strain that he suffered in that first season with the Lakers. So a little concerning there. Groin strain's out at least 1 to 2 weeks. Lakers have lost first couple games without him. The first official game without him against Brooklyn and game to the Celtics in which he got injured. Talk to me. Lakers in trouble. Is it Luka time? What are we about to see?
I think it's going to be a tough stretch for them because I believe they have the Nuggets twice, they have the Bucks twice, and they have the Suns and Spurs. So Spurs obviously a winnable game there, but in the next 2 weeks, the near future, it's a tough schedule anyway, even if you have LeBron, honestly. Yeah. And then they kind of come out of it after that. I think to me, the bigger issue as well is if you look at the game last night, you know, like Luka triple-double, 20-point triple-double, but 8 of 26, yep. Reeves 3 of 14. You know, this is where, you know, they're really going to lean on him in terms of shot creation, not just for himself, but for everybody else. But then this is also where you're really going to feel the loss of guys like, you know, losing Rui and losing, you know, Finney-Smith also didn't play last night. To a lesser degree, Jackson Hayes. Like, you really just have a lot of guys playing together that aren't used to playing together. And again, the head of the snake there is also a guy that showed up, you know, a month ago. So I think that is going to be a huge challenge for them, which is a tremendous bummer for the Lakers, just considering the run that they've been on.
Yeah, and I mean, the scary thing for them is that, like, they've been playing so well. They look like a genuine contender since getting Luka, and that had propelled them up to second in the West. But as tight as that West is, and just like a long winning streak like that or a good few weeks can propel you to second, 3 or 4 losses in a row, you can be back down to like 5th or 6th. And in the West, that does matter. You know, you're talking about obviously getting way ahead of ourselves. Something like whether you have home court in the second round against Denver or not, that's massive, especially against the Nuggets, Denver in the mile-high altitude. But just in terms of your first-round matchup and how the bracket plays out. So this LeBron injury could be a big determining factor in how their postseason goes. But also in terms of Luka, like, if you look at his last 6 games now, he had the really slow start as a Laker. His last 6 games, his numbers look a lot more Luka-like. He's shooting like 39% from deep on 11 attempts per game the last 6 games. But he also had to play, I think, like 37, 38 minutes last night. He's playing like 37, 38 minutes the last 6 games on average without LeBron. Like you said, head of the snake, other guys out too. The amount of creation that's going to fall on his shoulders, both for himself and for others, is a lot. I mean, you got Nico Harrison definitely somewhere rubbing his hands together, praying for his downfall, being like, you watch, his body's not going to hold up. But no, seriously, how concerned are you about that? Or are you more actually excited about that part? It's like, oh, we get to see vintage Luka.
I think I'm going to hedge here because it's definitely a little bit of both. Like, on one hand, you are, I think, excited to watch vintage Luka just in general. Like, he's a great player. I think also I have also been waiting. One of the best parts of this stretch has been kind of like that revenge. Like, I think everyone's looking at it being like, we can't wait for the Luka revenge. You know, like his girlfriend just broke up with him, or his boyfriend just broke up with him, and he's got the revenge, you know, body going. Like, that's what you want to see. However, I think there's definitely kind of a twofold concern. One is definitely the conditioning. Again, not to sound too Nico Harrison about it, but you know, you worry that maybe that's going to break him down a bit depending on how long the stretch goes. If it's just 1 week and LeBron's back, not a big deal. But if this extends 2-3 weeks, I think that's a concern. And I also think what you don't want to lose is that sort of, you know, the juice they had on that run. They really were clicking, like the chemistry, which is something obviously is sort of intangible. But like, you don't want to lose that if LeBron ends up being out, you know, 3 weeks, and then they have to try to find it, because like, if you look at the schedule right now, like we're really coming up against it. Like there is not that much time left. Like I think there's about a month left in the schedule, give or take. And I think you really, personally, I really want to see that team back together with a couple weeks run into the playoffs, just to have them settled, because the last thing you want, I think, is, you know, for them to kind of sputter down the stretch, get into the playoffs, and then it takes them, you know, 4 games in a series to get back to where they're at.
Yeah, if like LeBron's only time in the last month before the playoffs is like 20 minutes in game 82, it's not going to cut it.
Exactly.
Okay. Kevin Durant versus Skip Bayless. The topic I know you're just dying to talk about. Skip Bayless, the guy everyone wants to talk about on an NBA show. All right, so Skip Bayless, as he's known to do, comes out, makes some ridiculous statements, but I'm going to say not all ridiculous. So as ridiculous as his general statements are, what he was saying this time around was that it looks like Kevin Durant, not that he's checked out, but that he's not necessarily like all in with this Suns team, or on like trying to win with this Suns team. I mean, he mentioned some other stuff that he's got going on, like his business ventures. I don't think that matters. Like, not that it doesn't matter, but I don't think that's impacting Kevin Durant's play. Right. He also went on to detail how great Durant's production still is, how efficient he still is. Yes. I know you're a KD guy. We talked about it before. So I want to pose the question to you. How much truth, if any, is there in Bayless's comments, or you see them as like typical Skip Bayless, he's hating on my guy?
Well, okay, so again, get ready for another hedge here, your all-time favorite things. Number one, it is March. The Suns are going nowhere. Yeah. They have made it extremely public that they tried to trade this man, certainly back to somewhere else that he already was. So, I mean, I think it's, you know, it's everybody's mailing in their job in that situation. So I think, you know, is he all locked in mentally to try to carry this, you know, subpar Suns team to like a play-in? Like, you know, probably not. You know, should he be? Probably not. Yeah. However, like, this is a man that loves basketball. This man is 36. If anybody saw Court of Gold and just saw the way this guy talked about basketball and what it's done for his life, like, he is a hooper. He is going to show up to the games. He is going to play to the best of his ability. Like, he knows he's only got a certain amount of time left. And I don't think the actual on-the-court product is suffering. Like, I think the Suns are something like 80-54 when he plays for them in the 3 years he's been there. So he is impacting winning, and he is a guy that will come out and hoop. He is a certified hooper. Yeah. Is he maybe not 100% mentally checked in? Probably not, but who could blame him? Yeah. No, I think that's fair. I think his passion for and dedication to the game of basketball and his greatness should never be questioned. Absolutely. Like, and that's where I think the Skip stuff is just a little out of left field, when it's like, that's not where I think any criticism should be levied, because one, a guy who's maybe like not all in or whatever, resting on his laurels, whatever the case may be, is not going to come back from a blown Achilles in his 30s and be the player that Kevin Durant still was and still is. Absolutely. So that's that. I completely agree with you on the part of like, I think it's normal and human to be a little checked out, maybe based on the circumstances surrounding the Suns and also his not like long time left in Phoenix. Absolutely. Having said all that, and this gets to something when I had JD Bunkus and Vivek Jacob on the show last week, we talked about, and they both brought up, and I actually am curious to hear your side of it, because like I said, I know, you know, through off-air conversations, I know you are a KD guy, and that goes to more of like his legacy, not from a greatness perspective, but from like a team perspective, in that, at what point do you think it's like not coincidence that every stop it seems like there is some sort of drama? And I know you can say that about a lot of players or a lot of NBA teams, but like, you know, he leaves OKC, goes to Golden State, which I've said this for years, I don't fault him for. Like, he said at the time he was going to make the best basketball decision for himself. He did that. He went to the team with a once-in-a-lifetime amount of cap space, despite being how great they already were, and it worked. They won multiple championships. They got to the finals 3 times. He won 2 finals MVPs. Not going to hate him for going to Golden State. He leaves, that's fine too, but he leaves Steph Curry
to team up with Kyrie Irving, who already was seen as a volatile player. That blew up in a spectacular way.
Like that.
Ends up going to one of his preferred destinations in Phoenix, and within a couple years, again, you could say through no fault of his own, he didn't trade for Bradley Beal, but it's blown up, and there's a lot of drama there. You know, he did have the beef with Draymond back in the day. Like, there's just a lot of things. At what point? I'm not talking about his dedication in the game or doubting his greatness, but even for a KD fan, if I can call you that, at what point do you think it's fair to say, all right, where there's smoke, there's fire, and he's got to have some responsibility. It can't all be a coincidence.
That's a pretty. He is like. Points well taken. I think legitimately fair criticism across the board. I think he is such a fascinating test case in terms of like a modern NBA superstar, because I think like the days of like, obviously there's a Steph Curry, you know, but in the days of having like a superstar player who stays in one place and, you know, plays their whole career there, regardless of whether they're winning or losing, is like such an outdated thing. I think it's really interesting because every stop along the way has been a little bit different, you know? Like he went to OKC. He was the guy that got all the credit for signing the extension quietly while, you know, all the other, you know, the LeBrons of the world made big announcements. And then he goes to Golden State, where I think is such an interesting, like, oh, you guys think, you know, rings with a Z culture. Like, okay, I'm going to get my rings. He goes there and is like instantly unhappy, it seems. I think Ethan Strauss, I'll shout out the book that he wrote about
Victory
his
Machine?
time there. Yeah, because it's pretty insightful and really incredible. And like, honestly, like seems like a pretty dark, for all the success, seems like a pretty dark period of KD's life. I think he is somebody who like listens to the noise. And I think, as you can see, he is like an A1 Twitter fingers guy, which even to start the segment, like absolute great point on Skip where he said maybe we're both washed.
Yeah, that was great. Great response.
Yeah, like A1 there. Like this is a guy who's locked in and listens to the noise. Does that affect his situations? You know, for sure it does. But I would also just point to how different each situation has been, right? It's like Oklahoma City, he left, he was a free agent. There was really no, you know, he didn't ask them to trade him. There wasn't any drama. It's like Golden State is such a unique spot. Like you go there, probably the best basketball team ever. Like how could you be unhappy in that situation? I think that's a fair criticism. I think you go to Brooklyn and then there's a global pandemic and the guy you wanted to pair with doesn't want to get the vaccine. And it's like, oh, who could have seen that coming? I mean, which is not to excuse it, but I do think like his situations have all been so unique in the way that they have been like, just like who else could you say that these specific things could have happened to? Which I ramble on all just to say that I think all fair criticisms, you know, but I don't necessarily think that, you know, detracts from his legacy, I guess.
I think that's fair. Okay, let's close with the MVP race, which is a hot topic every year. But this year, I mean, I know it was a hot topic and like really contentious with the Jokic and Embiid rivalry. But this year, like just in terms of basketball excellence, you talk about like a hot, tightly contested, contentious race between Nikola Jokic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So Jokic drops the NBA's first ever 30-20-20 game on Friday night, I think it was, to add to what has arguably been the best statistical season of all time. Like a 3-time MVP's best season. Jokic said it himself. He thinks he's playing the best ball of his life. And then the Nuggets and the Thunder then split a couple games in which Shai is the best player on the floor in the first game. Jokic is the best player on the floor in the second game. Jokic has the counting stats for the most part and the on-off stuff. Shai is on track to win a scoring title. Like he's leading the league in scoring while playing excellent defense for the league's best defense. He also is leading a team that is 12 games up in the standings, or 11 games up. 11 games up in the standings on Jokic's Nuggets. So I can see the arguments for both sides, but you can't hedge on this one.
No.
Who's your MVP right now?
Okay, number one, just as a preamble, I want to say the NBA gets a lot of shit for the viewership is down, everyone shoots threes, the game is completely homogenized. We have an MVP race between two players who could not be more different, neither of which are spot-up shooters or chuckers or anything. So if you're not appreciating this shit, then that is entirely on you.
Excellent point.
I say that point to say your league MVP is Hamilton's own Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He is averaging, 32, 5, and 6, almost 3 steals plus blocks a game. He is having a 52, 37, 90 shooting season. He is the best player on the best team in the West, the best team in the league, I believe, but the best team in a loaded Western Conference. That is the league MVP to me. yes, Jokic is having a LeBron 2010s run right now where any given year he could be the MVP. Every year you're like, well, that was incredible. There's no way he'll get better. And he does it. But, to me, you at this point with something that's this hotly contested, you've got to consider the standings. Yes, Jokic is having a historically significant season, but if you look from a guard perspective, Shai is also having a historically significant season. And I just
maybe the best mid-range shooting season we've ever seen.
I think statistically the best mid-range shooting season we have ever seen as well, which again, to everyone being like, oh, the game's all homogenized, the MVP's a great mid-range shooter.
Yeah.
I think, again, overall, we should all be psyched, but in my opinion, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's MVP.
All right. I'll say this is why you're wrong, but I'll be honest, I'm not as passionate as I am about talking about this race and how great both these guys have been. I can't fake passion in terms of being like, it's definitely this guy, not the other, because I really do feel that this is one of the few races where I'm like I think Jokic should get it, and I would vote for him if I had one, but I can't knock anyone for voting Shai. And I will also say it's a close enough race where I do think it could change over the final few weeks of the season just because you never know. But the reason I think Jokic is still the MVP, one, I don't think there's any question that he is still the best player in the league. And I know that it's most valuable, not best player, because if it was best player, LeBron would have won a decade in a row. Forever, yeah. But I also think at some point you shouldn't punish a guy because he's won it 3 times in the last 4 years. And I get, one of the arguments too is Shai, this might be, even though he's young, this might be Shai's best chance to win or the best season ever. And are you going to rob him of that opportunity while he's the best player on the best team in the league when Jokic has already won it 3 times? To me, that argument is moot. It's who's the most valuable? Who do you think is the most valuable player in the league or the best player in the league? Give it to that guy. I just think when you look at what Nikola Jokic is doing, like I said, you can make the argument he's having the best statistical season, the best season any player in the history of basketball has ever had. Yeah. The guy just had a 30-20-20 game. He's averaging basically a 30-point triple-double as a center. He plays a lot. He is just about flawless. Shai obviously has the defensive advantage on the better defensive team, and I get it. Like I said, he's 11 games up in the standings. I get all that, but I just think if you boiled it down to gave people a choice between each player right now, who would you start a team with based on how they've played, even in 2024-25, I still think most sane people are picking Jokic, and it's that tells you something. Also, not that I think the on-off differential stuff should be a determining factor, because at the end of the day, it's also dependent on your team. For example, if your team has a great bench and you're a starter, your on-off might not look as good because your bench is just really good. And still, though, it's not a coincidence that Jokic dominates in this stat every year. And so this year, I had to write it down to remember. But so Jokic, once again, leading the league in terms of on-off efficiency differential, cleaning the glass tracks this as well. The gap between Jokic and second place, so I don't even remember who it is right now, is equivalent to the gap between second place and 26th place when it comes to on-off differential. So it's however you measure value, Jokic always comes out on top, and at some point I'm just well, then he should probably win the award for value.
Yes. And I think, glad I went first. But seriously, there isn't, I think there's an argument on who should be MVP and who is going to be MVP. And I think, you could make Jokic clearly has a strong case for who should be the MVP, but Shai jumped out to such significant betting odds. He has been a minus 300 and greater favorite for 3/4 of the season. And even when Jokic had the 30-20-20 game, I think his odds went down to minus 300, which is still pretty significant favorites. Really it altered Jokic's odds more than it altered Shai's, which I think is also just a function of voter fatigue is obviously going to play a part. I think the NBA voters tend to want to honor the player that is emerging rather than the player that continues on. But to your point, I think we are going to look back on this much the same way we do with guys like LeBron and Kobe and say, Jokic could have been MVP 7 years in a row.
Yeah, I hear you. And I also agree with the should versus will. Mm-hmm. I think Shai will win, barring something catastrophic down the stretch. Yeah. I would vote for Jokic, but I think Shai ends up taking home the award, which would be fine. Be Canada's first MVP award since Steve Nash's second. Mm-hmm. So Canada's third overall MVP award, first in 19 years. Also, Shai on track to be the first Canadian scoring champion in NBA history. So that'd be pretty cool. Yeah, I think we're going to see it.
Sorry. That is fascinating. Yeah, no.
Absolutely. As your mic just falls.
Yeah, just...
That's our cue.
Sorry.
It's all good. It's probably a good time to wrap up.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, no, always appreciate Scott coming in. We'll do this more often with him, talking about whatever the trending topics are in the NBA. And big thank you again to Teresa Resch, president of the WNBA's Toronto Tempo, for sharing her time with us and talking all things Tempo. My name is Joseph Casciaro. This has been the Unfiltered Show. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.